Hi, everyone. I, 28F, have an older sister Jackie, 32F, who has 2 kids, an older son and a younger daughter. Her son is 14 and her daughter just turned 12 a couple of weeks ago. Their father is not in the picture anymore and my sister's a single mother. I wouldn't say that Jackie and I are close, but we're okay. We aren't arch enemies either, like some other siblings here. I guess you could say that we're just indifferent to each other. Now about 6 hours ago, Jackie turned up at my house and asked me where her kids were. I had no idea what she was talking about because I hadn't even been at home for the past 4 days. I'd been away on a beach trip with my boyfriend, so I didn't understand what she was referring to. She told me that she dropped off her kids at my house 2 days ago and told them to ring the doorbell so I could take them in while she ran some errands. She told me that she'd texted me about it, but I didn't recall receiving any text of the sort and even showed her proof of it on my phone. But while going through my phone, she was able to discover the text that she'd sent before she dropped her kids off and I'd somehow missed it. Probably because I was on vacation and wasn't checking my phone often. She started to panic and accused me of being careless because now neither of us knew the whereabouts of her kids. She told me that apparently, she'd driven away before she saw that her kids were safely inside the house because she was counting on me to take them in. She told me that she had gotten into some legal trouble that she didn't want to speak about and that's why she'd been missing for 2 days. But now that she was back, she wanted her kids and she wanted them now. I didn't know what to do, so I suggested that she go to the police or something because I literally had no clue where the kids could be. They didn't even have their phones on them, so there was no way we could get through to them. Jackie didn't want to go to the cops because she just finished dealing with a lot over the last 2 days and the police's involvement was the last thing she needed. She turned my house upside down and accused me of being selfish and not thinking about my niece and nephew. She said that she'd been counting on me to help her out in this tough spot, but I'd let her down. She left in tears and said that she was going to knock on every relative's door until she was able to find her kids. I feel like a total idiot right now, even though I don't understand how this is my fault. Ida for missing a text from my sister where she told me to take her kids in because I was on vacation. Update 1. Okay, folks. It's been 4 days and I finally have good news. I've been in touch with Jackie because I really felt guilty about not noticing that text, even though it wasn't my fault. Today, she told me that her kids had somehow managed to find their way to their uncle's house and that's where they had been for the past couple of days. Now this wasn't our cousin, but it was Jackie's ex-boyfriend's cousin and he apparently had still continued to talk to his nephew online because he knew that his mother wouldn't let him stay in touch with him otherwise. I thought it was a little creepy at first, but then I realized that this uncle of theirs, Frank, 28M, had practically saved their lives by taking them in Jackie's and my absence. Jackie apologized to me for behaving badly the other day and said that it was pretty out of character for her to freak out at people like that. And I agreed because she was usually a pretty level-headed person. She told me that she hadn't slept a wink in the past couple of days because she was so worried about her kids and where they were. I finally asked her why she hadn't gone to the police and what kind of trouble she had been in exactly before this, which required her to leave her kids behind. So she finally confessed that she'd gone to gather evidence against the company that she was currently employed in because she'd heard from a particular source and they were planning to blame her for embezzlement. Since the company was facing a huge financial crisis and they needed someone to shoulder the blame. So upper management had figured that she could take the blame, as she was the head of accounting and had the most access to the company's financial records. She knew that she'd be fired within a few days, so she decided that she would collect all the evidence that she could in her favor from the office. Then she even went out of town to speak to her ex-boss about this and asked him to be on her side if she needed him to testify against the company during the hearings. That took a couple of days and she really did feel guilty for leaving her kids behind and not even bothering to check if they were doing all right during that time. Because she was just so frustrated with how this situation was turning out, especially since she'd always been an extremely honest employee. She didn't want to go to the cops because that would reflect badly on her and might even end up with her kids being taken away from her, which she didn't want. She broke down and told me that she hadn't even bothered to pack warm clothes for her kids, even though it was pretty cold outside. And she just completely neglected them because she was facing a crisis. I tried to console her, but I knew that it was pretty messed up to treat your kids like that, no matter what you're going through personally. Jackie and I aren't really in touch with our parents anymore and haven't been for a really long time. So I'm pretty much the only person that she can count on, and I know it's the same for me if it really comes down to it. So we might not be the best of friends, but we always have each other's backs. It's been that way since we were kids and I was disappointed that I couldn't look after her kids this time around. She was really lucky that her son had remembered Frank's address from when they used to talk online. She found out by accident when she logged into her son's Instagram account and went through his chats. She was so out of it that it didn't even occur to her until she opened her laptop. Her son would occasionally use her laptop to play games or to talk to his friends online. And when she remembered that, she instantly logged in and that's how she was able to discover Frank. That guy didn't have Jackie's number, so he wasn't able to contact her when her kids showed up at his house. Frank used to visit a lot before his cousin gave up custody of the kids 4 years ago, and after that, Jackie wanted nothing to do with his family, so Frank wasn't able to visit the kids again. but he was able to reconnect with his nephew online, and it was actually surprisingly Jackie's son who tracked his uncle down online and sent him the first text. I guess kids do remember who was there for them the most as kids. So anyway, I'm just glad that Jackie was able to find her kids and I don't have to carry around the guilt of not noticing that text sooner. I just hope that she's able to deal with her baggage better so that her kids don't have to suffer anymore. Update 2. It finally happened. Jackie's company fired her and they're also planning to come after her legally, just like she'd expected. They accused her of embezzlement and said that they would make sure she ended up behind bars. The poor woman is scared beyond words and has been texting me almost every hour, just so she has somebody to talk to. She does have a lawyer and a pretty good one at that, but even then she's going up against a pretty big force, so there's no telling what might happen next. She has asked me and Frank to look after her kids and help her out whenever she needs it because she would hate to end up neglecting her kids like she had the first time around. And both of us obviously said yes to the job, because she's going through a horrible thing right now and needs all the help and compassion that she can get. Update 3. So Jackie and her company's representatives are meeting with a court-appointed mediator today and she left the kids with me. They're quite good kids and it's horrible that their mother has to go through something like this. I guess the only silver lining here is that this has really helped Jackie and I bond together. She dropped off the kids at my house last night and I demanded that she stay for dinner because I really didn't want her to leave and face the night before this morning all by herself. After the kids had fallen asleep, Jackie had a total meltdown and told me how she'd dedicated almost a decade of her life to this company and now they were screwing her over without as much as a second thought. I consoled her through the night and insisted that she spend the night here because I just couldn't let her drive back home in that state. Even when she woke up this morning, she seemed nervous and anxious and I guess it's totally normal for her to feel that way even if she's innocent. I offered to drive her but she told me not to because she needed somebody to watch the kids and drop them off at school. I also needed to go to work after I dropped them off at school, so she went on her own. Frank will pick the kids up after school ends and drop them at Jackie's house. It's a pretty neat system that we've worked out and I'm really hoping that we don't have to stick to this for long, that Jackie can resume her normal life soon. I know this isn't the drama-filled update that a lot of people wanted to hear, but I'm really scared for Jackie and I just need a place to vent. So I'm turning to Reddit for help right now. Update 4. I just got to know something insane from Jackie and it finally makes sense why she was so nervous and jittery before the meeting, even though she hadn't really done anything that she had been accused of. Apparently, Jackie had been in a relationship with one of her subordinates for almost 2 years before this, and that's what she was really scared of, that her company was going to try and use this against her. And that is exactly what happened. She's even more screwed because unfortunately, this was not a relationship that HR had been told about. So it was kind of frowned upon. What was even worse was that she was the one who had initiated this relationship, and she hadn't even told her lawyer about it, so he was completely blindsided when they brought this up during the meeting. Jackie's boyfriend had pretty much submitted all their texts and stuff as evidence to the company and stabbed her in the back pretty badly. He called her later on saying that they'd offered him the position that she used to work in for selling her out and he just had no choice. Truth be told, he did have a choice. He just made the one that would benefit him at the cost of his relationship. Jackie came home today and told me all of this and I really gave her an earful. Because this was really irresponsible and stupid of her. Not only was she putting herself in danger by not being completely honest with her lawyer and the people who cared about her, but she was also not even thinking about her kids who were looking forward to having her around all the time again. She was crying yet again, but today, I was just too mad at her to feel bad about it. I told her that we all deserved better, and so did she. But if she wasn't willing to be honest and transparent, then there was very little the rest of us could do to help her out. After today's meeting, her lawyer had almost even quit because she hadn't been completely honest with him. I explained to her that this wasn't the time to be thinking about her image and so-called reputation, but to be thinking about how she could save herself from landing up behind bars. And for that, if she needed to bring out every single dirty little secret that she had, then she should do that and look out for herself. She seemed to hesitate a little bit, but she did tell me that she'd been considering getting her now ex-boyfriend to tell her why he'd sold her out on text. So that she would have proof of the company trying to screw her over on purpose. I thought that was a great idea, so I told her to call her ex and get him to tell her how the company had offered him her job in exchange for all the screenshots. So she called him up and then, it was a pretty easy task to get that egoistic idiot to confess on the phone. And we recorded it and sent it to her lawyer immediately. We don't know if it'll be helpful or not, but at least we know that we tried. As for the other proof, the company will literally have nothing on her unless they decide to go ahead and falsify proof against her just to frame her. Luckily, she has all the original documents of their financial records which she'd gathered before she was fired. So they won't exactly be doing themselves any favors by trying to plant false evidence. The biggest thing that they had against Jackie was her affair with her subordinate, but that's over now. And that's technically not even the point of this lawsuit, so it's not even relevant. It was only just a way to spoil her character. Update 5. So I've been hounded by you guys for almost 2 weeks now because you want to know what happened between my parents and us. And why don't we speak to them anymore? I was trying not to talk about that because it isn't really relevant to the whole Jackie thing, but since you guys have been insisting for days that I tell you so, well, here goes. My parents were both drug addicts who pretty much neglected us our entire childhood and were the worst parents on earth. We lived off of our neighbors' and relatives' kindness and generosity because our parents had taught us not to expect anything from them from a very early age. They were never there for us in any capacity, so of course Jackie and I gave up being fairly independent and didn't rely on anyone because we knew that we couldn't trust them. They kicked us out the second I turned 18 and told us that we could now make a life for ourselves separate from them. Because they were tired of taking care of us, even though they barely ever had to. Neither of us ever knew who our grandparents were, and the only relatives we had were an old aunt on my mother's side and my dad's second cousin who used to live on the same street and helped us out once we got kicked out. He helped us through college, but then when Jackie graduated, he took up a job out of state and that was the end of our relationship. Since then, it's just been the two of us and we somehow managed to build a life for ourselves away from our horrible parents and crazy past. I think the last time that we even spoke to our parents was about 6 years ago. My mother had called to inform us that our father had been diagnosed with dementia. She didn't invite us to come home or anything and just told us that she felt like we should know because he kept asking about us. Jackie and I did think about visiting them once, but then we forgot about it because we got too busy with our lives. After that, we never received any other phone calls from our parents, and neither did we bother to go check on them. To be honest, we don't even know if they're alive or not and we'd feel a little too guilty to go and find out at this point, so we've just let it be. Our lives are going on just fine without them. They aren't bothered about us, so we don't have to bother with them either. It's only the fair thing to do. Maybe that makes us terrible children, but honestly, they were pretty terrible parents to us as well. So whatever. Update 6. Hello to everybody who'd been following Jackie and my story. I told Jackie about the overwhelming response that we received and she is eternally grateful for each and every one of you who bothered to write sweet comments or send supportive messages to her through me. She's finally done with the case and no longer has to worry about whether she is going to be there in her children's future or not. She came to an out-of-court settlement with the company where she was paid a substantial amount of money so she would keep her mouth shut about the false evidence and all the false accusations that had been leveled at her. She is no longer going to work there, obviously, and is already looking for new jobs, which should be easy given her experience and knowledge in her field. For the time being, she's using the money from the court case to pay her bills and stuff. She's finally back to living a normal life now and I really couldn't be happier for her. It's been almost 4 months since I posted here for the first time, and since then, so many things have happened that I almost feel like you guys are an equal part of the journey that the two of us went through. Actually, 3, if we count Frank. All of us have a weird unspoken bond right now and we know that we can always count on each other, no matter what, because after what we've been through, I hardly think there will be greater challenges in the future that we won't be able to handle. Even Frank and I became pretty great friends over the past few months because we would meet often when Jackie would be busy with her attorney and would need either of us to watch the kids. So it would either be him dropping them off at my house or the other way around. Eventually, we exchanged numbers and started talking to each other as friends. He's a pretty funny and sweet guy and it's crazy that we met under such stressful and strange circumstances but still became such great friends in such a short amount of time. Jackie thinks that he has the hots for me, but I really don't think that's the case. And even if it is, he's really not my type and I'm not looking to date. So it's never going to happen and we're always just going to be really good friends. But anyway, coming back to the topic, Jackie's finally done with the lawsuit and she showed those people where they belonged. Because they're the ones who ended up having to pay her hush money and also sign an NDA, so they wouldn't have to worry about her dragging their company's reputation to the ground once she was done with it. They're lucky that she didn't want any more drama or legal trouble, which is why she took the money quietly and left the situation as it was. She told me that she's going to get therapy for both herself, as an individual, and family therapy with her kids. Because after what happened, she really doesn't trust herself to be a good mother and feels like she's going to continue making mistakes that are eventually going to affect her children pretty badly. I offered to let her move in with me for a while, so we could all live under the same roof and I could look after her kids whenever she needed me to or whenever she felt a little too overwhelmed so she doesn't end up putting her kids in any sort of danger and neglecting them like before. She hasn't responded to that yet and has told me that she needed a little more time to think. Because she doesn't want me to take on such a huge responsibility and she also needs some time to think as it is a pretty big move after all. Not just for herself but also for her kids. So she's gonna have to make sure they're okay with it as well. I told her to take her time but I really feel like it'll do them all a world of good to live with me. And I get pretty lonely at times as well, so it was very nice to have them over so frequently over the past few months and I would love to turn that into something permanent. Or at least semi-permanent for the time being, because I really do hope to have a family of my own someday as well. I don't know what's going to happen but I'm honestly just relieved that the worst is behind us now. Update 7. Hi, so it's almost been a year since the last update. And wow, I can't believe I'm back here after so long. I guess if you go back to my last update, I was talking about how Frank seems to be into me but I said something about him not being my type, and yet, Jackie was very sure that we'd end up together at some point. It's crazy but she was right. Frank and I have been in a relationship for almost 6 months now and I just remembered about this thread. And felt like I had to share this bit of information with you guys. So yeah, I guess he is my type and even if he wasn't before, I can't imagine being with anybody else apart from him now. Of course, Jackie's very happy about all of this because I just proved her right and she thinks that at least some good has come out of her insane goof up last year with her kids and everything. But she's doing a lot better now and working in a much more stable company in a better position with higher pay. She moved out just a couple of weeks ago, but she's moved just down the street so I can visit her anytime and it won't be any different than her living here. Another reason that I don't mind her moving out is because Frank is planning to move in with me next week and I couldn't be more excited for it if I tried. I haven't dated anybody in the past 5 years, so this is a pretty big deal for me. And I hope that this works out. I actually kind of know that it will, deep down, because Frank is just the best guy that I've ever met in my entire life. He is sweet and sensitive and so insanely funny. I can understand why my nephew contacted him the first thing, as soon as he made his social media account. The kids are doing better as well and my niece is actually the top of her class right now, so that's something to be really proud of. My nephew isn't really one for academics but is doing great at football, and if he keeps this up, he might even make the varsity team in the future. Everything is great now and going through my post from last year just makes me feel so much more grateful for everything that we have now.